rescue us. Hello, and welcome to another in a series of discussions about the results of the 2016 election and how to deal with them. Previously, we introduced the sponsor of this series, Indivisible South Bay, and what our volunteers are doing in reaction to the 2016 election. This evening, our discussion is going to be more focused. We're going to address the Russian interference in our 2016 election and our public discourse. My name is Eitan Fenson. I've been a Silicon Valley engineer, entrepreneur, executive for the last 30 years. I've also been an activist for pursuing social justice. Sitting to my right is Lisa Farino, who is a former educator and stay-at-home mom who's starting a writing and videography business. Lisa is also intimately involved with the National Voter Corps, an organization dedicated to addressing the serious voter suppression in our elections. Sitting next to Lisa is Jerry Morrison, a retired software engineer and a self-described amateur activist. Sitting next to Jerry is Mary Enright, a retired attorney and currently an educator. None of the four of us has had any professional political experience. We're all volunteers with a wide range of experience. In the discussion to follow, we will explore not only Russian interference itself, but also the ways in which the Trump campaign and administration have continuously encouraged Russian malfeasance, putting our society at great risk. If this show makes you want to get out of your chair, join your friends, and act to promote progressive change, then we will have accomplished something. Well, let's start. To begin, let me ask this question. Why does this all matter so much? What do we say to people who have Russia fatigues? They're tired of Russia all the time. What about progressive activists who believe that Russia takes away from more important issues that affect Americans directly? Or the activists who say that our efforts can't continue to be so negative. We have to be more positive. What do you guys say, Mary?
Well, I've heard all of those, and my heart goes out to people who have fatigue. And I also agree that there are really, really important issues that we need to address. But for me, the reason why it matters so much, despite all of that, I want to read something that somebody else wrote. I wish I had said it myself, but it's written by a man named Adam Gopnik. I think he's a writer for the New Yorker. Anyway, here it is. Countries don't really recover from being taken over by unstable, authoritarian nationalists of any political bent, left or right, not by Perons or Castros, or Putins, or Francos, or Lenins, or fill in the blanks. The nation may survive, but the wound to hope and order will never fully heal. Ask Argentinians, or Chileans, or Venezuelans, or Russians, or Italians, or Germans. The national psyche never gets over learning that its institutions are that fragile and their ability to resist a dictator that weak. For me, that's why this matters.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense to me. Jerry, what do you think?
Yeah, that's really well said. I think the way I think of this, first of all, is we have a madman with a flamethrower in the White House, and we need to put out the fires, and we need to try and take the flamethrower out of his hands. Trump is described as a wannabe Russian oligarch, using money to buy political power and then using political power to help loot the country. And he's using the authoritarian playbook, starting with telling a lot of lies, dividing the country into the lie believers, the lie, deniers, and the ones in between who don't know what to think, who don't know whether truth is knowable anymore, whether there is a truth. And this is very corrosive to democracy. This is very corrosive to the First Amendment and to just anything we can build a civilized society on, really. So it's really taking a wrecking ball to the country. And there's a lot of damage being done, and it's going to be hard to recover from it already. So this is what worries me the most. I mean, we can't just be putting out the fires. We may get to 2018 or 2020 and find that we don't actually have free elections anymore. It's really scary.
Indeed. Lisa, what do you think?
Well, I resonate with everything that they said, and I really feel that I can identify with the oppressiveness of the news, the constant new information we're getting about the latest thing that Trump has done or his team has done. And sometimes you have to unplug. You have to just do whatever you need to do, commune with nature, or take a bubble bath, or talk to your friends and forget about things. But then I think about what Howard Zinn said: you can't be neutral on a moving train. And basically, we're all on the Trump train, whether we like it or not. And he is taking us towards something pretty awful, an authoritarian regime, perhaps, tyranny, perhaps. So, and then in response to the issue of resistance groups saying we can't focus so much on Russia and Trump, I do have a strong opinion about that. I think, first, it's not either or. Right. We can't just say, okay, we're just going to exclusively focus on healthcare, we're going to focus on climate change. We don't have to worry about Russia and Trump because the special counsel is taking care of that. That's not really the way it is. And for the people that say that, well, all this Russia-Trump talk is taking all the air out of the room, and so it's actually not fair that there's so much attention to Russia and Trump. You know, I can just say that the options for activism are really limited when you're living in a tyranny. And even the possibility that we're down that track is very dangerous. They're throwing everything but the kitchen sink at us, and we need to respond to that. And we have the option of living under oppression or forming our networks and collaborating for something better. So.
I think we have a consensus that this situation is much more dire and serious and has ripple effects that, that many people really don't understand. And that's one of the reasons we're having this conversation. So what about those who are conspiracy theorists, who believe that Trump is being set up by our intelligence community, whose agenda has always been to overstate Russian threats, and now to do everything they can to weaken a Trump presidency? What about that? I'm going to add something. There are also the Democrats who are afraid, intimidated, that they're going to be accused of being obsessed about an issue that's a non-starter, of being on a witch hunt. So I'll just say myself, as far as the conspiracy theorists who claim that our intelligence community has it in for Trump, I think that his response to his relationship with the intelligence community is a huge threat to our security, to our national security, and by transference to the world's security. Recently at the G20, when he was criticizing our own intelligence community, I'm shocked that it has not had more of a ripple effect. And as far as the Democrats who are feeling paranoid or intimidated, it's time to step it up.
When it comes to Russia's interference in our elections and possible and now evidence of Trump administration collusion or coordination, at least, the evidence is very much still coming in. we don't know the half of it. I'm sure of that. And also, I'll just add that I'm working with this group, National Voter Corps, and we're fighting for free and unfettered access to the polls, and just mobilizing volunteers to help voters in 50 states. That's our primary mission. And at the same time, we have this Russian interference.
It's not just, what I would say to someone who is a conspiracy theorist who thinks that it's the intelligence community that is setting us up, I would say shift your focus for just a minute and look at Russia. Look at their history since the fall of the Berlin Wall. Look at what their foreign policy has been since that time. Look at what they've actively done in the last 10 years in terms of cyber warfare in Eastern Europe and in Western Europe, and now the United States. To me, that is very compelling evidence that this is not a conspiracy of intelligence people in the United States. There is factual worldwide evidence, and we will probably get into that more tonight.
We will.
About the cyber warfare that is Russia's foreign policy right now. I mean, they have made a decision.
Yep.
The Ministry of Defense has made a decision that they will not be using military force to get what they need. They will be using cyber warfare to get what they need, and that is what they are doing. And whether Trump is in office or not, this is going to go on.
Yep.
And
we're going to get to that in a bit. It kind of leads, what you've just said leads to the next question, which is, in the light of the traditional mainstream American bellicose attitudes towards Russia, why have Trump's sycophantic pronouncements about Putin and his seemingly blind eye to Putin's ruthless and authoritarian behavior, why has that not disqualified him during the campaign and then not crippled his presidency? Let me take a shot at that initially. I don't think we as progressives understand quite so much how there is a strong thread of conservative thought in this country that has long admired autocrats and tyrants. And their view of Putin, ever since he took over after Boris Yeltsin's failure, was that he was a bulwark against the corrupt communists who existed before. They view him as being a strong leader with appropriate policies to keep things under control in Russia. And in fact, they think, well, why isn't our president more like him? Couple that with Trump's very strong anti-establishment drain the swamp campaign, where you contrast his position with George H.W. Bush, Bill Clinton, the way in which they, the neocons, the American mainstream political community, really isolated Russia and put their thumb on Russia. The Trump campaign was very much in opposition to that. So we can't discount the level of admiration that a large element of our population has for autocrats like Putin. Mary, what do you think?
Well, I think, again, you have to look at the history, and I think this country, the people in our country for the last, well, since the Berlin Wall fell, we have not paid any attention to Putin. We've not paid any attention to Russia. And so we are looking at Putin maybe a little unrealistically. So what I would like to do is just give you in a nutshell what Putin is all about and what is this authoritarianism all about. Putin is the embodiment of the Russian state. He's made himself that. How did this happen? Well, I think it started when the Berlin Wall fell, and then all of those other countries in Eastern Europe fell, and then Russia itself fell. When that happened, over time, there was sort of a post-empire psychosis, if you want to call it. It was like, nobody's afraid of us anymore. I mean, my goodness, nobody's afraid of us. So they began a campaign to make Russia great again. I mean, really.
Sounds familiar.
Sounds familiar. That's exactly what it was, to get back their empire and their power. And the biggest obstacle to them having that, in their eyes, is the United States.
Right.
After World War II, the Allies divided up Europe, and they said to Russia, yes, Eastern Europe is that's your bailiwick, you can have it. Communist governments were set up, that was their realm for 40, 50 years. When all of that fell, Russia lost all of that. And all of those countries said, hey, NATO, we want to be with you. Would you protect us from this guy?
Right.
And of course, NATO said, yes, of course, come right in. Well, to Putin and to the Russians, that was the worst thing. It was a direct affront to their national interests. This is an area that they have seen as their sphere of interest since Peter the Great. I mean, this has gone back.
Indeed.
So with that came this rivalry with the United States, and that is not going away, okay? The other side of it, there's an internal thing that goes on too, is for Putin, in order to maintain his power, he has to project this image of the country is under siege, and he's going to keep doing that.
Lisa, what do you think?
Well, I think Mary said pretty much everything that I was thinking about, and I really take a back seat to you and your knowledge of Russian history. But I do think that Americans haven't paid much attention to Russia. The average American, since the fall of the Berlin Wall, as you said, we are slowly waking up. There are very
Ukraine
good,
woke us up.
Ukraine woke us
Yeah,
up.
big time.
Well,
And that was the
to
message.
some extent.
With Ukraine, I think that Putin was saying, we are no longer playing by your rules. We're playing Moscow rules. We're not going by your agenda.
But
at
we
all.
did go talk to Congressman Khanna.
Yeah, we did.
And we talked about Russia, and he did say, I think Congresspersons like Swalwell are hammering the Russia message a little too hard. And I was very surprised to hear that. You didn't know that, I think, but that was one of the things that he said. And so there is, even in Congress, a difference of opinion about what our relationship should be.
And you were quite eloquent in informing him that he may be misinformed.
I think so.
I'm not sure I said
This
it exactly
strategy.
like that, but that's the gist of what I said.
Jerry, what do you think?
So one thing is that you can look in retrospect and say the U.S. Foreign policy towards Russia in the last decade or so is not done the right thing. Okay, it's been a big mistake. I would like to add that it's time to end this linguistic convention of saying "we" for something that our government did.
Right.
You know, we didn't attack Iraq, right? Our government did. But back to the Trump part, right? You know, Putin and Trump, they see themselves as oligarchs. That's where the power comes in, is corruption. Right? It's really interesting to have somebody campaign on I'm the only one that can fix that corrupt swamp in Washington. And this is obviously the most corrupt administration we've seen and probably ever in the United States history. And it's not getting better.
Right.
And he is attacking the intelligence agencies because the intelligence agencies provide information that he doesn't like. He attacks the free press because they provide information that he doesn't like. The government ethics office is not doing its job, and the head of that one resigned, right? The House Ethics Committee, Oversight Committee, isn't doing its job with oversight there either. I mean, we have a president who has international conflicts of interest and emoluments violations, a bunch of violations. What are they doing? Where are they? They're the only ones that can oversee the executive branch.
Indeed. All very troubling. Let's go to the next question, which is interesting. So what's the big deal about publishing some DNC emails? Who cares? What's the big deal? Jerry?
Yeah, this is a really good question. People hear about the Russian attacks on the DNC and they think that's the whole story. And that is right, just the tip of the whole iceberg. Stealing information from the DNC and Podesta's emails and then weaponizing it, which means going through it, finding key things, maybe modifying parts of it, maybe falsifying, faking parts of it, and then releasing it at strategic times. Okay, that's one part of it. But the much bigger part is that stuff becomes grist for a larger thing they call active measures. And there are black, white, and gray active measures.
Yeah, some of us haven't heard of it. Could you explain?
The white active measures are state-sponsored media like Russia Today, which is now called RT, and Sputnik. They put out, in some cases, regular news, in some cases, slanted news towards the Kremlin, in some cases, select news and ignore other parts. In some cases, they make up stories with some little seed of reality or whatever it is and maybe shoot fake video. That's the real fake news. Fake news is not what you don't like. Fake news is something that didn't actually happen. Pizzagate, Hillary selling uranium to the Russians or something, all these kinds of ridiculous stories made up. That's the white ones. They're out in the open. The gray ones are lots of other media sites around the world that are loosely connected or appear to be loosely connected that quickly pick up on these pieces and spread them. And they may add their own spin to them, their own twist to them. They may create new fake items. These ones have not obvious, they have gray attribution. You don't know where the stuff is coming from and how reliable it is. But they help spread that stuff. The black active measures work one-on-one with people. In the past, earlier decades, there would be lots of individuals that might be in the country, right? Nowadays, on the internet, there are thousands and thousands, tens, hundreds of thousands of social media bots. Fake social media accounts pretending to be your next door neighbor or people, not literally, but other people in your area, tweeting and Facebook posting, and they pick up on these news articles, these fake news articles, and spread them quickly. They know about them right away because they're connected. And they amplify it. They spread it rapidly. They amplify it. In some cases, they tweet it straight at the president. And we also notice, so that this is, I'm going to say there are two reasons why this stuff has been more successful than in the past, right? One of them is this amplification that wasn't there before, the social media bots. And by the way, tens of thousands of Twitter bots went quiet after the election. They came to life again for the French election.
Right.
Right. But the other thing is Trump repeats this kind of stuff. He takes the Soviet fake stories and repeats them. In some cases...
You slip of the tongue, not Soviet, but Russian.
Sorry, Russia, yes, thank you. In some cases, the Russians may come out with a story, and then within minutes, the Trump campaign is repeating this to the press. It's like, well, how do they know about it so fast?
Yeah. Mary, any thoughts?
Well, I think it goes to, you've made a really good description about what actually, is being done, and it's not just hacking emails. It's much more sinister than that, and it's much more dangerous than that. And I don't have the knowledge to really get into that. I think somebody else can get into that. But this is an issue about Russia, and this is Russia's foreign policy. And like I've said before, they would be doing it whether Trump was running for office, no matter who was running for office. They would have been doing the kind of bot work that you're talking about. This is their foreign policy. This is what they do. They have, what they call them are information battalions. They recruit the top students from technology schools to come and serve their country instead of joining the military. Right. This is the military. This is serious stuff. Yep. This is very serious stuff. And they're getting more and more successful at it. They've had a long history of doing it. You can read about what's happened in Eastern Europe and in Western Europe, the kind of chaos that they have created. And we are headed for that.
Yeah. Yep.
we are headed for that, and our government is doing nothing.
Lisa?
Well, Jerry, you mentioned this to us the other day about the different black, white, and gray types of disinformation and infiltration. And I was shocked because I had heard something about this. I'd heard Clint Watts speak on CNN or one of the channels, but I had not heard it laid out so completely. And I think this information is not getting out there. And I'm someone who watches the news pretty regularly. So that was striking about what you said. And I have to bring it back to the actual situation with the elections coming up and the idea that there are these hundreds of thousands of Russian bots that are still very active. And we know that Jared Kushner was the director of their digital operations. We know that he changed his security clearance papers 3 times because he kept adding more meetings with foreign, including Russian, including Russian officials. And we also know it's becoming more and more evident that this is probably in violation of it's not just now an issue of obstruction of justice, but you have to look at the campaign finance laws, and it states very clearly in those that solicitation or acceptance of contributions is against the law. Solicitation or acceptance of contributions from a foreign
It's even more general than contributions. It's anything of value.
Right. I know, but I'm saying contributions could be monetary or anything else. It's very general, right? That's clear. So they're still sorting out what happened with this meeting with Donald Trump Jr. and all the other people, including Jared Kushner and Brad Manafort. We don't know exactly what happened, but the fact that this was revealed by the New York Times and they were dancing all around it, the Trump administration, to say what happened, and they obviously stumbled all over themselves and lied about it. It's very troubling because this happens again and again.
It's like if they aren't guilty, why do they act so guilty?